So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us during this information session for Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowship. So this fellowship is actually funded by a Title VI grant from Department of Education. And I would like to introduce our Director for Center for Asian Research and also the committee member for FLAS, Dr. Juliana Shower.
Thank you, Chan. Chan Luen is the coordinator for the Center for Asian Research and also the go-to person for people currently have FLAS awards. So she has been, excuse me, she has been a great help to everyone to figure out how they can remain in good standing while they have the award. But my job today is to talk a little bit about how to get there, how to actually earn that award. It's competitive, it's nationally competitive, and we make that award to both undergraduates and graduate students. So those of you who could I see just like a show of hands really quickly to let me know who all is here today because they are interested in applying for FLAS. All right. And who among you is a graduate student? 2. All right. So 3. So what I'm going to say initially is going to be primarily for undergraduate students, and then I'll add a few comments to that with regard to graduate students. But I think that for both groups, this should hopefully be useful. As Chan said, foreign language and area studies fellowships are fellowships that the United States government awards in order to train people who are experts in particular languages and in particular area studies. So, um, you know, there are a number of foreign languages for which this award is being made, and here at ASU, the award is being made for Asian languages. So that means primarily Chinese, Korean, and Japanese, Indonesian, Vietnamese, and sometimes some additional languages like Sanskrit or Burmese or Nepali, but that is those are special cases, case by, and we decide those case by case how and whether we can meet those demands. So if your language falls within Asia, but is not one of the ones that is regularly taught at ASU, I suggest you speak with John before you apply, but in general, we do want to encourage you to apply because if we can make it work and you do get the award, then we certainly want to try and work with you, but we can't promise that we can offer those languages because primarily we're just authorized for the ones that we do regularly offer at ASU. So if you are an undergraduate, you have to have taken at least 1 year of that language for which you want to apply for a FLAS award. Okay, that means you cannot apply for an award because you think, oh, I think I should learn Korean, but you never have thought of that before. And so you have to have 1 year in, and so you can apply for your second, your third, and your fourth year, but you have to have your first year already on your transcript. And so there are a number of parts to this application, and this is for everyone. I suggest that you take your time with it. It's not, it has a lot of things, and if they don't all come together at the right time, that might hurt your ability to be successful in this application. The committee, when they review it, they want to have that information right there. And we work very hard to make sure that your file is complete when it goes to the committee. But it needs to be complete, and you have a very important role in that. So be sure to track each part of your application and be sure that all of it is being submitted. So let me show you how you do that. Let's see. So I'm sharing my screen, I hope. And we should go here to the website of the Center for Asian Research. Can you all see that? Okay, great. So we have information usually about things that are events, speakers, and so on, but also a fair amount of information about FLAS awards. So if you're interested in a career where you can use your expertise in foreign language and area studies with regard to Asia, for example, we hosted a virtual career fair uh, from July this year, and you can watch that video if you're interested in seeing what kinds of professional career path the Department of Education is trying to support by making these awards. In other words, they want experts not only in government or in universities and colleges, but also in the diplomatic service, in business, in a range of fields that require being culturally and linguistically literate in that language. And so it's not like some other awards where you're required to do government service afterwards. That doesn't apply here. The only obligation that you do have if you do accept the award and you hold it is that you follow up once a year with us upon completion of that fellowship to let us know what you're doing now. Are you in a position where you're using your language skills? Are you in a position where you're using your historical, your cultural knowledge? Because we use that data to help the Department of Education make its case with Congress that they should continue these fellowship programs. So we have to have some measure of success of showing that this was useful for the fellows who held this award and they are now using it in their professional careers. So now from our CAR website, the address is up here and you can also Google it on ASU or on any search engine, Center for Asian Research at ASU. From there, you can follow to these academic year fellowships for 21 to spring of 22. Um, just to make things a little bit easier for everyone, we've decided to add another box to that questionnaire where you can also ask to be considered for the following summer, because there are academic year fellowships and then there's summer fellowships. And just to make it easier for people who want to be considered for both, you can use the same application, but you need to indicate it on the application. Okay. So here we have some points that might help you in how to phrase your self-statement. What is the purpose of these fellowships? To develop expertise in a foreign language and cultural fluency. And here are some of the requirements. You have to be a citizen. You have to be a degree-seeking student at ASU. You have to be eligible to receive a tuition scholarship. And you have to have a complete application, including a FAFSA statement, because financial need is one of the criteria that we consider along with a number of other things. So if you don't have a financial need statement, then part of your application is missing. So be sure that you have your FAFSA included in that. So you can tell already this is getting complex and there are a lot of different parts to this application. Okay, you have to be a citizen, and you have to be ready to enroll in intermediate or above for fall and spring in your chosen language, and simultaneously, you must be enrolled in an area studies course that can be offered in a number of different places, but it has to focus on that region. So say if you are taking second year Korean and you're enrolling in a course on Buddhism, that would meet the requirements for that semester. And Chan can help you identify appropriate courses for to meet the area studies requirement. They're offered in a number of different schools, whether that be in the social sciences or in the humanities. There are even some in communications and other fields. Art history is yet another. So there's it's an opportunity for you to learn more about the region in a broader context, more than just the language. Okay. So let's look at some of these application forms here. You can, by the way, fill those out and submit them through our website, okay? And here you go through the eligibility again, but here are the instructions. If you meet each one of these boxes, then you have all the parts that go into it. So a transcript that's sent to our website, to our address, asia@asu.edu, 2 letters of recommendation. And we say at least one from an ASU faculty, one can be from a language evaluator. So this is important. Be sure, sometimes undergraduate students are hesitant to talk to faculty members and ask them for a letter of recommendation because they feel, well, whatever, or they feel hesitant to do that. So my suggestion to you is, if you haven't done so already, introduce yourself to some ASU faculty members and let them know that you are planning to apply for this, and ask them if they would feel comfortable to write a letter of recommendation for you. Give them plenty of time to do that, because you're asking them to do something for you. So don't ask the night before it's due. It's not a good way for your professor to remember you kindly. Give them a little time. They're just as busy as you are this time of year. So make some connections, ask them if they're willing to do that, and let them know in advance what's needed. Give them a couple of weeks, and then you can always follow through after 10 days or so to remind them. But don't wait till the last minute, and don't make it out of the blue. Explain to them what this program is, because they may not know. Then you have to have a completed language evaluation form. And for that, you'd want to talk to your instructor of presumably your first year, but maybe you're already in your second year. But in any case, someone with whom you've studied the language, who can evaluate what level you've achieved. Okay. Then you also need to have a self-statement. I wanted to say a little bit about the self-statement because, especially for undergraduates, this sometimes is the most daunting part of the entire application. And I wanted to be sure that you have a little bit of guidance on how to write those kinds of statements. There's an art to them. And I know that if you still remember your high school guidance counselor, my first thing to say about that would be to say, forget everything they told you on how to write a self statement, because this is a different ballgame. This is here you're competing for a nationally competitive fellowship. This is not how to get into college, and so the rules are a little different. So if you have a hard time writing the first sentence on the self statement, start with the second sentence. And if you have a hard time starting with the first paragraph, start with the second paragraph. But just start explaining why you're interested. It doesn't need to be a smart line about how you discovered something in your grandmother's attic that made you want to become a scholar of Asia or something like that. Just tell us. You know, I've taken this language, I've enjoyed it, I'm doing well with it, and I want to continue to do it so that in the future, after I graduate, I can pursue my knowledge of the region together with my designated major. So tell us what your major is and let us know how your interest in the major relates to interest in the language in the region. Say you're a political scientist and you're studying former communist nations, and you might want to study some places in Asia, and that would be a compelling reason for your committee, your review committee, to say, oh yeah, this person knows why they want to do this, and they have a vision of how they're going to make use of this fellowship, and they have some idea, they've given some thought about what it might lead to in the future after graduation. Maybe you want to go on to grad school. Maybe you want to join the Foreign Service. Maybe your specialty is supply chain management and you want to use Chinese to build these fantastic supply chains. Whatever your reason is, tell us, spell it out, put it in plain language, and just let us know. Because that makes for a compelling reason to want to have this fellowship. This fellowship would then support you in achieving those goals. But you need to spell it out for us. Don't make us guess. The review committee, each member of the review committee, and there's 6 or 7 of them, has a whole pile of applications to go through. They don't want to have to flip back and forth to try and find where you might have possibly said what we want to know right here. So it's really important to have a well-structured self-statement and an explicit one where you tell us straightforward why you want to continue to work on this language, what you envision it might lead to in the future, and how it relates to your current major. So, and you can also tell us about your aspirations. We understand that plans might change, and that's a reality of being in college. You know, your horizons grow and you change your mind about things. We understand that, but tell us about your aspirations, what you want to do, what you could envision yourself doing with this at some point in the future. Now, when you're done drafting that self-statement, let it sit for a little bit and come back to it and edit it. Make sure that, you know, it's grammatically right. Maybe now you're ready to have that first sentence. I am applying for this because, you know, let us know up front. What is it that you want to do? And then the rest of the statement becomes an illustration of what you just indicated. So you are really gearing it towards your reviewers who may not know you, but who want to know about you and your interest in this fellowship. So you have to really be explicit and straightforward and articulate in telling us how and why and what you want to do with it. So this takes a little work, and I would recommend that you spend some time thinking about it and then editing your draft a couple of times. Also, think about who you'll ask for your letters of recommendation. Your your transcripts matter. If your GPA is high, that's very good. Um, but it's not the only thing we will consider. I think in general, we require, I think it's at least a 3.5. John?
Yes, so the average that we receive is actually 3.8, but if your GPA is lower, I think you should put something in your personal statement explaining why your GPA is the way it is.
Yes, that's very important. We understand that sometimes some things happen, but you need to speak to it. Don't leave it up to the guessing of the review committee to imagine what the reasons for it might be, because they really wouldn't know. And so you have to be very clear in your self statement. If you've traveled to the region, if you have a cultural heritage that ties you to one part of Asia or another, say that. Let us know. We want to know if what your motivations are and what your interests are. If you want to go study in hopefully we can all go again by next summer. If you want to study at some place in Asia to continue your language training in a more intensive manner, let us know. There are also places in the United States where you can sign up for intensive language study, and you may be able to apply for a summer FLAS for that. So let us know about those things if you know now what your plans might be for the coming summer. And so here are some of the forms. They're pretty straightforward. You can fill it out right on the form that you can then submit. We are asked to collect some information about race and ethnicity because we want to encourage people of all backgrounds to gain expertise in the study of Asia and Asian languages. And here you want to let us know what language you're applying for and where you studied, your level of proficiency, and any honors, scholarships, memberships in honor societies. Um, Make it about academic stuff. We're not so interested in non-academic achievements. In a college application, you might put down that you're in a debate team in high school or something like that. We're not so interested in that here. But if you are on the dean's list, we definitely want to know that. Okay. All right. So maybe you've already been to China. Tell us about that trip and tell us about how it relates to your travel. And this is especially important, well, for both undergraduates, but also graduate students. Let us know if you're concurrently applying for a Fulbright fellowship, for example, or other federally funded grants or scholarships. Because if you were to be awarded both, we would have to negotiate how that works out. Sometimes you can do it sequentially, sometimes not, but you can't hold them concurrently. You can't have two federally funded awards for the same thing at the same time. So we usually try and work with you on that, but that's something we definitely would want to know about. Okay. All right, so here's the information about your recommenders. And again, please ask faculty members, ask academics, don't ask your supervisor if you're holding a job. Ask someone who knows you from an academic context. And that's actually really important. And here I'm speaking from experience. In the past, we've had applications where we've gotten letters of recommendation from church leaders or supervisors at work, and that's not a strong recommendation. They might think the world of you, and rightfully so. But for this purpose, this committee wants to know about your academic ability. They really are not so interested in what you do outside of school. They want to know what you are doing as part of your college education. And then here are the institutions you've been to. The statement of purpose is that self-statement that I've talked about at some length. If you want to use the award for study abroad, and then here you have to sign this application. So you can see this is a complex application, but it's worth submitting it because the award is nationally competitive. When you work on your CV, that's definitely a line that you want to put on there if you were awarded a FLAS award. And it can be also financially very rewarding because FLAS awards carry both a stipend and a tuition fellowship. Now, we don't always award the full amount of the tuition fellowship when fellows already have their tuition paid for through other means. For example, you might be a really bright and an ambitious young student, and then you might have a presidential fellowship already that takes care of your ASU tuition. In that case, we won't award you tuition again. But say you have some awards and there's another $3,000–4,000 missing to cover your tuition costs 100%, we will pay for that. Or you have no other tuition fellowships, then we will pay up to the limit that's designated, which is $5,000 per semester for undergraduate students when it comes to tuition. And for graduate students, it's $18,000 for the academic year. And there, it's also the case, say, if you're a graduate student and your department gives you a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship that covers tuition, then we won't make a second award for tuition because your tuition will already have been paid for. So, but if there is a gap in the amount between what you have to pay and what you've received from other sources, then we will try and make up that difference up to that limit. John,
Thank you, Dr. Shower.
what did I forget?
No, I was just going to open up the floor for anyone who want to ask question about the FLAS application process.
I do have a question about the Japanese requirement. I read the requirement is that we needed 2 years. Is that 2 years in like Japanese studies? And if I'm on the way of uh, completing the second year, um, so I'm not like, I haven't completed second year yet, but I'm applying for summer. So by summer, I should be ready for like completed my second year. Would that be okay? Or
No, so when you start, so if you're thinking about applying for the summer application, you should have your first year already completed by the end of May. So right before you start your summer session, you should have your first year completed. Does that answer your question?
yes, because like we have intensive Japanese, which complete like a first year curriculum in a semester, which is what I'm taking now. And I'm thinking about like taking the intensive next semester. So by summer, I should have 2 academic year of Japanese ready. So that means that I'm eligible to apply, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, I didn't make it clear that the requirement is a little different for graduate students. As a graduate student, you can apply for FLAS support for the first year language study.
Okay.
Okay, so as an undergraduate, you must be in your second year, but as a graduate student, it can be your first year.
Okay. Thank you. May I have another question? I'm sorry, I just have all these administration questions. So you mentioned that like you need a corresponding course on the culture, but on top of the language requirement. What if it's a previous work that I've done in my master? Um,
No, it has to be concurrent.
okay.
So, while you are holding this fellowship, it's called foreign language and area studies. So those are really the two parts. It's not one on top of the other. It's really both at the same time.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you're a graduate student and if you're working on your dissertation project and you already completed all your coursework, then we can count your dissertation research as a part of your area studies. But in order to do that, we need to know what you're working on, how many credits worth of work you're working on, and we need to get a permission from the grant officer in DC. So we can work around that. You just have to communicate with us.
Okay.
You would also want to tell us in your self-statement, in your statement of purpose, how the study of this particular language will move you forward in your dissertation research.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
There's a question in the chat.
Yes, for the application, rather than writing on the form, can we include other documents such as a CV?
Say that again, please, John.
So yes, you can include other documents like your CV or even your personal statement. You will have to do an attachment. So you can attach it with your applications when you email it out to the email address asia@asu.edu as an attachment. But we do want to see the personal statement. So you cannot send your CV instead of your personal statement.
Correct. Yeah. I strongly recommend that you send us all parts of the application at the same time. It just makes the process a lot easier, and it ensures that everything will be kept in the same file and the committee will all see it at the same time. And it just lessens the opportunity for misunderstandings. And we will also, John usually pre-screens those applications. So if there's something really glaring, we might get in touch with you and say, oh, you forgot to do this or that, but don't count on that. It's not our job to make sure you get all the parts in. You have to make sure you get all the parts in.
Yes. Any other questions?
I guess I'm just curious of, how to frame this for a graduate student and dissertation research. In terms of this language is already a language that I've studied for a while, and I'm not. I don't know how to discuss this issue in term and make it sound like, this is you should fund more of this language study that I already know.
Well, are you a native speaker?
No, no.
Well, see, so I guess there's room for improvement, but
Oh, obviously, yeah.
So you would want to maybe, I don't know how you would be, how your proficiency would be evaluated, but there would be a language evaluation as to what year you should do, and we do fund advanced language study.
So we have fellows who are actually in their 6 years of language studies. So they're near native levels, and they can still use this funding to continue studying that language and use it towards their research studies. Okay, if you don't have any other questions, thank you very much for attending. We're going to stop the recording.